All right, so we're going to do something a little different for the whiteboard video this week. No fancy intro, take zero, that kind of stuff. What we're going to do is we are going to go through all of our whiteboard videos and YouTube content over the last few weeks, and we're going to go ahead and answer the questions. At the end of the day, I decided to do this because it's the best way for me to reinforce that what it is we're teaching in the whiteboard video for those of you that are new to the channel. We used to do whiteboard videos years ago. During COVID, we really stopped shooting them because we couldn't have a team together. So we started doing live podcasts. We were doing a podcast every single week on Tuesdays at 1, a live stream. And that's been really successful. But a lot of work goes into shooting the podcast if you want it to be high quality. There's a lot of research, booking guests, you know, the whole nine. So what we decided to do through our advisory board was alternate whiteboard video and podcast. So podcast, you know, basically A week and B week. On A week, we'd have the podcast on Tuesdays, and B week, we would shoot a whiteboard video on Tuesday and we would publish it Wednesday. We've been doing that this year since I think we started in February. And what we haven't done is we haven't answered questions from those videos. So we're going to do that in this one. All right. All right, so all I'm going to do is I'm just literally just going to scroll through the comments section of the YouTube channel. I'm going to go in depth on some of these, but let's just scroll through them. So on the how to calculate OEE and why you need to, hey, Clark, thank you. This brought my understanding of OEE and its importance to manufacturing to a whole new level. Thank you. Thank you. The DMZs don't prevent ID10T faults. So there was a short that we published a few days ago that was a clip from a podcast where we were talking about security. And I was talking about how, you know, DMZs are basically useless. They're purely a IT manufactured, you know, IT companies created DMZs to sell something to manufacturers. That's all it is. If those of you who do systems integration and work with clients who use the Purdue security model and are familiar with the DMZs, most of the time, let's say you're, you know, the future of work's remote. So you're a contractor, you're an integrator, you're an engineer, you're working remotely, and they need to get you access to the plant floor to access, you know, to access HMIs or to access a server on the plant floor, or to acquire data from PLCs, whatever it is. And the way that they generally do that is they'll put what's known as a jump server inside of the DMZ, something that has access from the external. So what you'll do is you'll access over the wide area network. You'll hit an endpoint, which has got a VPN appliance, which gives you, that's on the, you know, like the L4, layer 4 of the organization. That'll give you access to the DMZ, which is generally sitting at L3. And then that DMZ, the jump server within the DMZ, is the thing that has access to, you can access to the VPN, but once you're in that jump server, that actually has access to the plant floor, right? Well, first off, anybody who's done any type of work like that knows that it's incredibly inefficient. If you were to go and talk to executives, I can tell you in my company, for example, when we see a client who's using a DMZ, there's a huge amount of contingency that gets put into the billable rate. So let's say if I've got access to the plant floor through a DMZ, and we think that a task, a specific task, is going to take 160 hours, that's easily going to be doubled simply because of the DMZ access. So now you're looking at 320 hours. I mean, literally, what it does is it splits your velocity in half. So velocity is of the total amount of hours that you have available to you, say 8 hours of development time in a day. If I'm operating at 50% velocity, that means that I'm doing real work, like actual work, for 4 hours. That's actually a really, that's a world-class number. 50% velocity is actually a really, really high number. So if I'm working through a DMZ, that's going to be split in half to basically 25% velocity. So it's highly inefficient. But the question that Mark Boone asked and a couple of other people, so what's the alternative? If we're not going to use a DMZ, what are we going to use, right? Because there are legitimate reasons why DMZs exist. It's not like it wasn't cooked up on it anywhere. Do I believe that the cost-benefit analysis works out for businesses? No. What you're losing by implementing the Purdue security architecture far outweighs what you gain. Far outweighs what you gain in terms of lost, in terms of quote unquote security, which really doesn't exist. I mean, security is not a thing. It doesn't matter who you talk to. Even I just had a call with a guy a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to be working together on this security concept, right? And I think we're going to do blog posts, collaborate on some blog posts and some videos and stuff. And even he agrees. He's a security guy, and even he agrees security is not a thing. It doesn't exist. All you're doing is putting barriers up. You're only as secure as the smartest person who wants to get your data. So what you lose by using the Purdue architecture and using DMZs far outweighs what it is you gain in risk mitigation. So what's the alternative? Well, the answer is, we talk about the answer is you take the virtual private network that you're putting in an appliance in an L4, and you actually put it on the plant floor with the access you need. So the way that we generally do it is we'll either do one of two things. We'll either create a VLAN. We'll create a VLAN on the plant floor that has all access to all of the edge devices that we need to have access to. So all the edge devices that we need to talk to are on a VLAN on the plant floor. And then what we do is we put a VPN appliance on that VLAN that has access to the internet. Okay. And so what you'll do is we generally use the TOSIbox appliance for this. So TOSIbox has a whole range of appliances. In fact, our entire infrastructure is all TOSIbox. All of our clients' infrastructures are TOSIbox. Part of the deal that we have with our clients is you have to allow us to install one of these appliances. We're not going to work within the DMZ architecture. It's ridiculous. There's no way we can help you if you ask us to do that. So if you're using BombGuard or any of those types of jump server infrastructures, we get an agreement from the client to install a TOSIbox appliance on the plant floor on that VLAN. So what it gives me the ability to do is, while I'm working on my workstation here at my desk, what I'll do is I'll open up the TOSIbox connector. I will choose the client that I want to connect to. I'll connect to it, and now I will be on that virtual network on the plant floor, and I can access PLCs, I can access HMIs, I can access ignition servers, whatever I need, and I have direct access as if it's in my office. Okay, so there's no latency. I'm not using like a VNC connection, which is really like a completely virtualized connection, right? So anyway, that's the alternative. The alternative is industrial VPN appliances. Most of the time we're installing those, we're literally provisioning it here in our office, and then we're mailing it to the client, and we tell them how to set it up. They set it up, and then when we're done with the project, they just mail it back to us. Anyway, great question. And I did let Mark know this will be answered in the whiteboard video. Industry 4.0 mindset. Haseen, I'd really love to enroll if you have any course. Yeah, actually, I want to answer this question too. So I got a DM on Twitter. Someone had asked me, why did you create IIoT University and the way that your courses are structured? Why do you do it that way? Okay. Let me start off by saying I didn't want to create IIoT University. That in terms of like a business model or whatever, that was never in the cards. We never planned to do that. We did it for two reasons. Number one, when we created the Industry 4.0 Discord server. So when we created the Discord server and all these Industry 4.0 professionals joined the server and they were getting answers, they were getting additional answers to our YouTube videos. The question came, hey, would you consider doing like a mastermind, or would you consider doing a training program? What I had mentioned was we have an internal training program that all of our engineers go through, and they asked, well, could you just do that as a product somewhere? And so a few years ago, Zach was here, and we just decided to go ahead and build that out and test it. So we did one mastermind session in August of, I think it was 2019. And then in September, we did a mentorship session. Mastermind was like for leaders of Industry 4.0, and mentorship is for the engineers, the rank and file who are actually supporting. The response was overwhelming. We got lots of questions afterwards. Hey, can you cover this subject? Can you cover that subject? And so we created IIoT University to do that, to fill that gap. So IIoT University is essentially mentorship and mastermind, where mastermind is basically, if you're a mastermind member, in general, you just get everything. You get any workshop that we do in general. Occasionally there's a workshop that we don't include in it, but it's generally whether or not it applies to Industry 4.0 leadership. Or if the cost, if our cost to produce it is out of, it doesn't work commercially. The goal with the IIoT University is to basically break even. Or it's not our goal to make money there. We just want to be able to support developing the content. So we want to be able to develop as much free content as we possibly can. And then when we need to dive deeper, we can, and the community can support that through purchasing the workshop. So you have Mastermind, which is sort of the flagship product. It basically gets you everything. You have mentorship. We have Mastermind is for those who want to lead. They want to strategize. They want to architect Industry 4.0 solutions. They want to be Scrum Masters. They want to be directors of digital transformation, or they are. Mentorship is for all the engineers and developers. And then we just have workshops that we do in addition to that. The question he asked me is, A, why do we do that? And then B, how do we pick with which workshops we do? So we really pick two ways. So if you look at what we've done in the last 8 months, we did a MES core boot camp, which is just an overwhelming success. We're doing an advanced MES boot camp, which is really 3 separate boot camps or one together. We just did the ChatGPT workshop again, which was an overwhelming success. We're actually going to do another one, and in that the second workshop, we're going to only build products. So in the first workshop, we showed you how to do a case study, functional specification, product plan. We did the baseline education on what ChatGPT and natural language processing actually means for the industry. The second workshop is just going to be pure development for 4 hours. So we're going to build multiple products together. The ideas for the products come from 2 places. They come from either our advisory board, which is made up of members of the Industry 4.0 community who say, hey, we need content on this, this, or this. Or it comes from us, like, hey, this is something we should talk about. All right, the ChatGPT thing came from Mastermind and Mentorship. There was a request. We're going to be using ChatGPT a lot in our development for Mastermind and Mentorship going forward. So anyway, that's IIoT University. It's why it exists. It's how we choose the content that we do. All right. MES to ERP Communications Explained, Matthew Law. Great video. If your ERP or MES is a non-customizable SaaS, so that is, I'm paying software as a service. I'm paying a monthly fee for something in the cloud. It won't necessarily have the fields or tables to display the data from the UNS. Since these are core applications, is it best that they are platforms and possibly even open source for full customization potential? So the answer is yes. I mean, but I do want to qualify what Matt said here. If you use like Odoo ERP, which is SaaS, and they have multiple models, they have an on-prem, they have a cloud-based, but it's still SaaS. Whether you have it on-prem, you're still paying by user, either annually or monthly. And it does have the fields and tables to display your data from the UNS, because the database itself, the Postgres database in Odoo, is yours. It's not multi-tenant, especially if it's on-prem. It's not a multi-tenant schema. It's your schema. You own that database. So you can add the tables, and then you can use the API to access them. But the spirit of his question, is it best that your MES or ERP are platforms and possibly even open source for full customization potential? The answer is yes. I'm gonna answer this in another question down below, but you have to remember why it is ERP software. If you look at things like SAP, why they were actually built, right? As standalone monoliths, all right? They were built to solve a business problem, a business function. And they were built at a time when the concept of the industrial Internet of Things platform didn't exist. So the idea that you would collect all data and store it didn't exist. The idea that you would treat all smart things in a business as a node in an ecosystem and they'd all be connected in this common ecosystem, that didn't exist either, right? And so what you see in SAP today, what you see in Oracle or JD Edwards today, is a function of old technology. What we're saying is that the smartest companies in the world, if you look at the companies that are most digitally mature, they don't have a series of monolithic applications with point-to-point integrations between them. What they have is one common platform upon which they build their business functions. Some of them are ERP functions. Some of them are MES functions. Okay. So to answer Matthew's question, since these are core applications, is it best they're platforms and possibly even open source for full customization? The answer is that would be ideal. Yeah. Jason Doy in We Are All Dispensable. Boy, did I piss people off on that video. By the way, I didn't know that they were publishing that, the digital media team, but John's a great guy. Jason Doy, yes, he is, brother. Somebody wanted to know, agreed, no one's indispensable, but where can we watch the OPC UA portion of the video? And that was LinkedIn. No, not sure. He just said no, thanks. We are all dispensable. Let me say this. I think also the company is dispensable to many employees. So there was a lot of comments on this. We are all dispensable. Let me say this again, and let me clarify what I was saying here. I've met a lot of people in my career, a lot of people in my career who suffered the ultimate wake-up call, who believed that they were so important to an organization that they couldn't possibly ever lose their job. They would never be one of the victims of a layoff if economic factors drove that, or they would never get fired from their organization. And I have seen over the course of my career, I mean, literally hundreds of people get hit in the face with a 2x4, shocked, right? And the spirit of this message, that we are all dispensable, is two things. Number one, there's no one in an organization who, including the owner of an organization, who is indispensable. And the reason why is because there are lots of organizations where even the owner or the founder of the organization, I mean, Steve Jobs wasn't indispensable. Now, when he got removed from Apple, Apple lost its way the first time. But after he died, Apple's been just fine. Tim Cook has done a really good job maintaining Apple as one of the 5 most valuable, influential companies on the planet. So Steve Jobs was indispensable. Elon Musk, or Steve Jobs was dispensable. Elon Musk is dispensable. All right. I mean, Elon has an incredible team behind him. I mean, most people don't know this. That's why the people who talk shit about him on Twitter are like, why aren't you just running Tesla? Well, it's because he's already built an incredible team. An incredible team. We're all dispensable. If you think that you're not dispensable and you're going to take offense if somebody says to you you're dispensable, well, that's a you problem. And all of everyone who commented here who have an objection to it, they're like, hey, I'm really important. No, you're not. I mean, none of us are. We're not important. What we are is we are as meaningful as our last accomplishment. That's what we are. Okay, and that was what the message is here. Amalok, but this is the piece I want to talk about. He said, next I want to do a video of working in a toxic workplace environment and how to deal with it. Okay, so 2 things. I don't really know what toxic means, and I actually, if somebody says like, this is mostly brought up in the context of like a relationship. This is a toxic relationship, or this person is you're so toxic, whatever. Yeah, I don't believe in that. I don't believe people are toxic. I believe that all of us control how we react to certain situations. I was raised, and even my mentors to this day still insist upon this. Great lesson that I was taught by a mentor related to this toxic piece. Early in my career, There was when I graduated from college, my father, I threw my own graduation party, and my dad came to my graduation party, patted me on the back. He said, "I'm really proud of you, but nothing you learn in college makes a difference in the real world. Your real education starts today." And he knew that I had gotten my first job, and he said, "My recommendation to you is don't be like everyone else, every other college grad who's going to start at this organization. Be different." And I said, "How so?" And he said, "Go find the most experienced person in your field, in that organization, and learn everything you can from that person." And I didn't really understand what he was saying, but what he said was, you don't know anything. Your mindset needs to be, you know nothing. And go find the most experienced person in that organization and go learn from them. So that was a really, really important lesson I got, because I saw all the other college grads thought they knew everything. They literally didn't listen to anyone. I got this elite education. I know everything. They all eventually learned they knew nothing, right? I was lucky. I went in knowing I knew nothing because my father told me I knew nothing. And I went and found the guy with the most experience. And it was really these two guys. This one guy his name was Ron Harris. He was actually an electrician. And Ron had carved out a niche for him at this organization. And I soaked up everything Ron would tell me. He was leery of me because he didn't want me to, engineer him out of his role. But I learned as much as I possibly can from Ron. And then this other guy named Joe Rolfe, who was like the guy who discovered me. Joe had 30-something years across this broad spectrum, and I soaked up everything I could possibly learn from this guy, Joe Rolfe. And then the next guy was this other guy, Lenny Rosenfield. I soaked up everything I possibly could from Lenny. And I deferred to him. Even though there were things I knew they didn't know, there were a lot of things they knew that I didn't know. In fact, far more. They knew way more than I did. Okay? So that was the first thing. The second thing is that Joe Rolfe guy. Early in my career, I would push back on people pretty hard. I could be dismissive of people's ideas occasionally. And one of the things Joe told me, he said, one of the greatest skills that you can learn in your career is how to work with, lead, and work for various types of personalities. So as opposed to trying to find the people that you want to work for, that's the person who works for your personality, what you need to do is have the skill set to identify and work with various personalities. He said, you're going to work for leaders who are absolute dicks. You're going to work for people who are shady. You're going to work for people who are selfish. You're also going to work for people who are incredibly selfless, who are ideologues, and you need to understand how to work with all of them if what you want to do is perform at the highest levels in any organization. So I don't look at individuals as toxic or environments as toxic. But let's say, for the sake of argument, I work in a toxic workplace. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and figure out why it's toxic. And I hate that fucking term. I don't even know. I mean, it seems like I don't have a victim mindset in my life. So I would never walk into a room and go, oh my God, this person's triggering me. This person, I'm victimized by this person. It's just not how I think. I would never be like, you did this to me. I mean, I think that's a really bad way of, and by the way, Amalok, I mean, it's good your real name's not there, but I'll tell you this. The company you want to work for is not going to hire you if you write comments like that. It's like, that means that you're looking to be offended, right? The mindset needs to be, everyone's human. Even the most obtuse human being is a person who was born as an innocent, naive baby and was crafted, through experience, into somebody who is jaded and, in your terms, toxic. What I would say is this, and to directly answer your question, if you work in a place that you don't feel aligns with your values, go find the place that aligns with your values. And see, that starts by understanding what your values are. What do you believe? What's your mission? What are the things that you value? I personally value transparency. So my organizations are all built around transparency. What does that mean? I want to know the truth. I don't want someone to cater their message to how they think I might react to it. I don't want people using soft skills on me. I don't want people reading Carnegie and trying to figure out how to make their idea my idea so that I buy into their idea. That's all stupid. I mean, it's ridiculous. I value transparency, just straightforward. Boom, here's the issue. Boom, 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 boom. The reason why is because that's the fastest way. It's the quickest way to the solution. That's why I value it. Authenticity, I think it takes too much energy to try and pretend to be someone you are not. So therefore, I want to create an environment, a place, a workplace for people where you can be who you are, right? Expertise. It's really important that you know what you're an expert in and you act like it. Like when you're the expert, you should really exert your authority and then defend your position. Humility is understanding what you're good at, what you're not good at, surrounding yourself with the people who are good at the things that you're not, and being an expert in the things that you're good at, right? So I'm not good at considering people's feelings. I'm not good at making people feel special on their birthday. There are many things that I'm not good at. I surround myself with people who are good at all those things, right? And then the last thing is servant leadership. Why do you want to be a leader? Like, what is your mindset of being a leader? For me, it's about having a positive impact on the world, right? Being a leader is not necessarily about making the people you lead feel the best they possibly can 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's cognitive dissonance. So what I would say is know what your values are, know what your mission is, go find the companies that share your values and mission. They genuinely mean it. The toxic workplace thing, what I would say is, I've worked places I didn't like, but I've never worked a place where I would say it was toxic. I just don't even know what that means, if I'm being honest with you. Mezzo Lati, rock on. This is really changing the way we work. We can do more with less. Thank you for this video. This was the Arduino Wi-Fi live demo where we used ChatGPT to build a solution using the Opta Wi-Fi. In the follow-up ChatGPT workshop we did on Thursday, we actually built like a full product. We did literally almost a month's worth of work in just 4 hours. We actually built a product in 53 minutes, start to finish, using SQL, Python, and Ignition. We built it in 53 minutes using ChatGPT in that workshop. And that was an actual solution we had done before for a client that took 40 hours to build. So yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to touch a lot more on ChatGPT and how to leverage it. So I really loved it. Such quality. Thank you. That was Arduino Opta. All right. Rockstep. So ChatGPT is like playing Jeopardy where you must provide the right question. I'll take production KPIs for 800, Alex. Rockstep. Yeah. Let me say this. ChatGPT it's like having an omniscient, omnipresent assistant who learns how you speak, can answer basically any question, but doesn't have access to the problem. And you are the conduit through which you connect the problem to the intelligence that can solve it. Okay. The world has changed. The fifth industrial revolution has started. In fact, I'll talk about this one right now. I was going to do it right at the end, but I did a post on LinkedIn the other day in wake of the ChatGPT workshop saying, the fifth industrial revolution has started. And somebody commented and said, hey, everything I've read about the fifth industrial revolution is it's going to be about circular economy and sustainability and blah, blah, blah. Okay. That is not what the fifth industrial revolution is going to be about, circular economy and sustainability. And the reason why is because the economies across the earth are not advanced enough for all of us, the whole planet, to focus on circular and sustainable. If the most advanced economies on earth choose to focus on circular and sustainable, they will be overtaken by the less advanced economies on earth who are leveraging the technology, focusing on efficiency, productivity, and output. Okay. Because right now, circular and sustainable costs you more money. It's more expensive. All right. The market, at the end of the day, the market always ends up deciding. The market made the decision whether or not communism or capitalism was the better economic system. Russia failed because Russia failed in the 80s and collapsed in the 80s because our economic engine, we just kept spending on military, which made Russia have to spend on the military. But Russia was operating on a economy that had stripped away incentive to produce. Whereas we doubled down on free market principles in the 80s, which is really how we got over the hump with the Cold War with USSR. Our economic engine, which was driven by individual incentive to produce, decided which one won. Okay. The fifth industrial revolution is about the convergence of human intelligence and artificial intelligence, whereas the fourth industrial revolution was about the convergence of the OT space and industry and the IT space and industry. The rising edge of the fourth industrial revolution was TCP/IP winning the protocol wars in the late 90s. Okay, the rising edge of the third industrial revolution, third industrial revolution was the automation of industrial processes. That was 1969 with the release of, our first automation devices. Okay, so whether that's relay logic or whether that was PLC, we were able to automate operational technology. IT was what created IT infrastructure, business networks, business systems. The fourth industrial revolution started with the TCP/IP winning the protocol wars in the late 90s, which then gave us a protocol upon which we could connect operational technology with information technology. And we could take the data from those two things, put them together to automate business decisions. So third was automating industrial processes. Fourth was automating business decisions. Okay. The fifth industrial revolution is about the convergence of human intelligence and artificial intelligence using AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality. And the outcome is going to be being able to put the smartest people on the biggest problems, no matter where they are in the world, and to do that at the speed of light. ChatGPT is the rising edge of that. So natural language processing is the rising edge of the fifth industrial revolution, where we're going to combine together human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And when we stack virtual reality and augmented reality on that, you're going to be able to put any human being, the best problem solvers on the biggest problems anywhere in the world. So instead of having them be limited to the physical connection, I can only solve a problem in this room because I'm only physically in this room, I'm going to be able to solve a problem anywhere in the world. Okay, that is Industry 5.0. That's what it is. Now, is it going to serve sustainability in ways? Sure, if sustainability is the problem we focus on. Is it going to create a circular economy? No, it will not create a circular economy. We're not there. We're not going to get there. The definition that Industry 4.0 that the EU came up with for Industry 4.0 in 2011 was all bullshit. It was bullshit. It was goals, right? Their original definition of what Industry 4.0 was going to be, it didn't play out, and they ultimately admitted by the end of the 2019, 2020 that it was a failure. But what actually happened with Industry 4.0, and it was the convergence of IT/OT to drive decision making and automate business processes, that using digital data. That's what it is. And the outcome was things like Tesla winning, Amazon winning, right? That's what the outcome was, right? So ChatGPT is the rising edge of the fifth industrial revolution. There's no question about it. I want to answer two more questions. I want to answer Anish and then Yigit. So Anish asked about in the MES to ERP communications explained. What about B2MML schema for integration? All right. So something, and this is going to go to Yigit's question as well, and that let me read these. I'll read both of these and then answer them together. So Anish says, what about B2MML schema for integration? For those of you who don't know, B2MML is essentially an XML schema that allows you to map industrial data to ISA 95. Okay, it was the intermediary step to a unified namespace where you structure functional namespaces under a semantic hierarchy that is ISA 95, Enterprise Site Area Line Cell, right? The integration effort to use B2MML schema for Industry 4.0 applications, that is where we're treating everything as a node in an ecosystem. They're all connected together through a hub, not point to point, which is how B2MML was designed. Is the effort outweighs the benefit. So we generally, the only time that we're ever using B2MML is when we're using it as a standard. Like, hey, we're going to structure functional namespaces the way B2MML says we should, right? But in terms of using B2MML and any of the B2MML connectors, that is where we're basically hitting an endpoint and what's coming back is an XML schema. We generally don't do that, and we generally don't recommend it. All right, Yagit says, I very much respect your technical expertise on the Industry 4.0 value chain, and I follow you from different platforms. However, no one gets to 90% OEE is quite a bold statement, which is not reflecting reality. I can tell you from my automotive experience, if a production line cannot reach 85% OEE after a ramp-up period of 18 months, it's not a profitable production line. I've seen sustainable OEE trends over 90% of different production lines. Of course, it depends on the company and product maturity. The answer is no, you haven't. What you have seen is a number that has been manipulated through various techniques. The most common techniques in the automotive industry to manipulate the OEE number there's really two of them. Number one, what they'll do is they'll only use two of the three underlying values to calculate OEE. This is a very, very common one in the Japanese companies, where what they'll do is they'll only take production and quality as part of their OEE calculation. So they'll take performance, they'll take quality, they'll multiply those two together, and they'll say whatever that number is, that's the OEE number. And this is very common. We've seen it in dozens and dozens of examples of Japanese car manufacturers and their suppliers, okay? That's number one, the manipulation of the calculation to get the outcome that we want. But the biggest one that we see in the automotive industry, it's actually two that they kind of work together. Number one is the manipulation of runtime. So by adding in planned downtime that was never actually planned to be there. So you may get some cataclysmic event, and what they'll do is they'll schedule a safety meeting during a long downtime outage, so that what they can do is subtract 45 minutes from the downtime number so that we end up with a higher availability number than initially anticipated. That's a really, really common one. But the biggest one is rework. Never dinging the production line for rework. So say something gets through, say I've got a 16 cell line, I get to the fourth cell, and I've got to rework it. I've got to send it back to the second cell. They actually give themselves credit for a second run through instead of dinging their production line. So the reality is that you haven't seen 90% OEE. And what I would challenge you to do is to bring me to one of the sites that you think has 90% OEE. Okay. I'll pay for it myself. And then I'll show you how it's not 90% OEE. 90% OEE is such a rare number. It is incredibly rare. And anybody who works in manufacturing execution, we talk about this all the time. I was using an example with one of these Japanese companies, right? If you look at we were working for a tier one automotive supplier that was owned, one of the largest tier one automotive suppliers in the world, that was owned by a large Japanese car manufacturer. And we were brought in to build a manufacturing execution system on one area of the plant. So it was 5 production lines. And they were already calculating OEE, right? They were calculating it in the PLC, and they were calculating it on paper. Okay. And the example I just gave to you was just three of the mechanisms they used to manipulate the number. Their target OEE number was 82%. So what it was none of the managers, none of the supervisors would get their production bonus unless they hit 82% OEE. They brought us in to calculate the OEE, okay? They didn't. It was an engineer who brought us in and kind of snuck us in. He had $250,000 left over, brought us in. He knew that there was more gains to be captured. They were calculating their OEE around 82, 83% religiously over the previous 5 years. We build a digital manufacturing execution system that accounts for rework, that accounts for the downtime, which they weren't calculating. And we use the standard OEE calculation. And their worst performing line had 26% OEE. Their best performing line had 42%. They were calculating it at 82. Now, the director of operations, both the Japanese mirror, so in Japanese companies, if they have American operations, they have like a Japanese manager who's equal to the American manager, and really the American manager is just sort of like doesn't have any authority. The Japanese manager is one who has the authority. The American director of operations brought us into he said, your number's wrong, threw up his arms, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, it isn't. And I could, let's go and we'll, he called this huge meeting. He had the process engineers. He had all of the Kaizen, continuous improvement folks in there, and he had his mirror in there. And I just went up on the board and I showed exactly where we were capturing the values and how we were calculating it. And then I showed how they were calculating OEE and why our number was right. And he got fired. So at the end of the day, and I've shown these numbers a million times, over the 18 months, they went from 4,000 units of waste a month down to 500. They went from 35,000 units of production per month to 70,000 for a company that has ostensibly had 82% OEE. And that's just one example of 100. I mean, the reality is here you get that you haven't seen 90%. And if you brought me in, I'd be able to show you how. And the reason why I know that is because I've only ever seen, if you think about all the companies that have brought me in, I've worked with thousands of companies in my career. I've evaluated, just in terms of evaluating manufacturers, 1,390 something manufacturers globally. I've done major global implementations on now over 275 different companies. 90 has existed exactly one time. That's it. And it's Tesla. All right. And then we'll close with Francois Jean. So on the MES to ERP communications explained, this is actually a really good objection that he raises. Although Francois, sometimes I feel like is trolling me all the time, but this is actually a good objection. He says, so what's the difference? So if you watch that video where I said, what's the difference between the Industry 3.0 way of integrating ERP and the Industry 4.0 integration? And if you look, we're using point-to-point connectors, and then you're using point-to-point connectors. You're using connectors in an IoT platform to convert the topical namespaces from the ERP into functional namespaces that can go into a unified namespace, right? So Francois says, what's the difference? Please don't tell me that your IoT platform will discover suddenly the bomb. Yes, it will. That's how we do it. We use the business API, the BAPI, and we discover the bill of materials. The difference is what we're doing is we're taking the tags or the topics, depending upon which platform you're talking about. We're taking the tags or the license tag or the topic that is the bill of material, and we are mapping it to a place in the unified namespace. Okay, we're saying this goes to this place in the namespace, right? He says you build custom, and custom means that if the ERP or the MES changes, you need to rework these connectors. No, we don't have to rediscover the bill of materials. The change to the BOM we're going to see. All right, we will see that, but we still have to map it. We'll have to go in and say this delta now belongs, these three new parameters, topics, or tags now belong to this in this place in the namespace. If your SCADA system is ISA 95, then there's no added value to have a UNS aside. Yeah, I mean, that just makes you, yeah, I mean, we're going to have to, I mean, what I would say is you need to watch more of our videos. If we look correctly, you're building a 3.0 architecture. No, we are not. 3.0 architecture is a linear architecture that goes up a stack, point to point. So PLC HMI to SCADA, SCADA to MES, MES to ERP, ERP to cloud. Okay, that is an Industry 3.0 architecture, and it relies solely on point-to-point connections. Okay, he said you have exactly the same number of discrete connections, and you need an extra one for the UNH, which in this case has no sense. All right, so this is the valid argument here. So in a digital, when you're digitally transforming an organization, you actually write what is known as minimum technical requirements, and you say, if what we want to do is we want to have a single source of truth for our business, we want a common infrastructure through which all the smart things in the business can access the data and information that they need. And then when they create new data and information, a place to put it back to for other consumers to get. Okay. Instead of I'm gonna extract data from here, I'm gonna bring it to here, I'm gonna do ETL, and then I'm gonna create some value that's gonna flow out the top to the business, right? Like a fountain almost. What we do is we say no. Each connection in a business creates information, data and information that can help us analyze the business. Each integration, each transition of data or transformation of data into information creates additional value, and that should all go to the same place. So that I should be able to look at the genealogy of an event that goes from the starts at the plant floor, is used in the calculation of some KPI, which is then used in the calculation of some other KPI, which is then reported somewhere, which is then mitigated somewhere. We should be able to see that genealogy in one place. The Industry 3.0 architecture never takes that into account. It also doesn't assume that all producers of data are also consumers of data. Okay, so what I showed you there is basically how do you take a legacy ERP system and transform it so that it can plug into an Industry 4.0 architecture. But the ultimate goal is to buy an ERP system that, or build your ERP functions in one common infrastructure. The ultimate goal is I want to be able to install my ERP system and have it meet my minimum technical requirements out the gate. Okay? The point here is that there isn't clearly a real solution to connect ERP or even MES to UNS. I mean, that just isn't, I mean, it's preposterous. You have, Francois, you have thousands of people all over the world using this architecture in the biggest implementations in the world. I mean, I'm not the only one who's saying how to, I mean, I've taught everyone how to do it. But, I mean, it's fucking preposterous. This isn't a theory. Like, you know, I mean, the best thing that I can do is invite you to have me give you a demo. You try to pick it apart. I'll answer all your questions. The only deal will be you have to allow me to record it and publish the video so that we can, the next Francois Jean that comes along who says, there's clearly isn't a real solution to connect ERP or even MES to UNS, we can just point them to the video where we proved you wrong. Okay. But I do appreciate the comment. I really do. And I actually think where you said you have the exact same number of discrete connections and you need even an extra one for UNS, which in this case has no sense. That's valid if you're only looking at this first step. But the goal is, how do you, if you're going to digitally transform an organization, you're not going to tell a customer that if something, you're not going to say to a customer, if you don't meet the minimum technical requirements, we're going to have to rip and replace. So your ERP isn't edge-driven, report by exception, lightweight, open architecture, and it doesn't support whatever protocol we've selected. Okay, so therefore I don't have to have middleware engineers. Like, we don't want middleware engineers between any smart thing and infrastructure. We have to be able to turn smart things on and have them report to infrastructure so that consumers can consume the data that's reporting. turn it into information and put it back for other consumers to consume. That's what UNS is all about. If you don't want to have to tell customers they got to rip and replace anything that doesn't meet your minimum technical requirements, then you have to have an intermediary step. Integrating through an IoT platform using their native protocols and then transforming into your protocol is the intermediary step. But ultimately, what you want to be able to do is decouple that and have the ERP plug directly to the UNS. The advantage here is that the structure you create with the IoT platform is the same structure that you would report with the ERP. So there is no additional integration. All the consumer, as long as you structure the data correctly, the consumers will be able to consume it, whether it's being published directly from the ERP or through an IoT platform. Okay. Anyway, I do appreciate the comment, but I think you're definitely missing the pieces. All right, well, let me see if there's anything else. Make suggestions for an IoT platform, Marcio Minutes. You know, I mean, the answer is the best out there is for on-prem is going to be Ignition. So I'm a big fan of many platforms. I always feel bad making the recommendations because I always invariably leave one out, or 2 out, or 10 out. My favorite platform is Ignition for sure. I think Ignition, with their price increases and some of their strategic partnerships, are going in the wrong direction. Just be honest with you. I think inductive automation is likely putting themselves in a position to become very vulnerable to competitors. I think the platform they need to worry about the most is Tulip. I think no question that's the platform they got to worry about the most. I think with the advent of ChatGPT, the last thing that software companies should be doing is increasing their prices. In fact, their price should come way down. Inductive automation's cost to support their platform, that is to maintain releases of stuff, has plummeted by a factor of 10 just by the release of ChatGPT. And in fact, I mean, we've been demonstrating this. If you're in software development, you know, I don't know what the actual number will be, but I'm speculating. The average software developer, if you were writing, you know, say 3,000 lines of code in a week, say 1,000 to 3,000 lines of code in a week, you're probably going to personally write maybe 100. I mean, I've been testing it over the last couple months, and the sheer number of lines of code, the reduction in the lines of code that I write is definitely a 90% reduction. So that means all of the workflows, all of the costs that goes in of TCO, total cost of ownership for software, when you pay a platform a certain, 18% a year so that they can continue to maintain the software and give you updates, their costs to maintain that software have plummeted. Now, they may not be tapping into those cost savings, but their competitors will. I mean, the cost of software is going to drop dramatically. And the number of competitors are going to pop up everywhere. I mean, just the sheer number of pieces of software that are going to come out is just going to be fucking staggering. I mean, we're going to show you something in the next ChatGPT workshop. We're going to build a product that I've been trying to get somebody to build for a long time now, and we're going to do it. And I've already tested it. I've built it already. We're going to build it in under 2 hours. Okay. I mean, in fact, I could tell you what the product does. If I told you what the product actually does, you could go build it yourself. I could get 100 people could go build the exact same product if I just told you what it is I wanted built. That's how much software has changed since November of 2022. So while I love Ignition and I think it's the best IoT platform out there, they just announced another price increase for their licensing, which is the second year in a row. It's completely unjustifiable. There's no way to justify the increase other than California's poor economic decisions, and I'm sure their costs have gone up because of that. There's a big mass exodus of, business leaving the state of California. We should actually be seeing the price of software go down. And anybody who builds a platform right now, I mean, the best one would be, I'm going to talk to Aaron Semley, actually, who's the CTO at Highbyte. I'm going to ask Aaron how much his development effort has dropped since they started using ChatGPT, which I'm sure they are. Okay. Love inductive automation, Ignition. I love frameworks. I really love, in the new version of frameworks, actually looks really, really awesome. I'm a big fan of Tulip. I like the direction that Tulip's going a lot. I think the big sleeper and the one that no one's seeing coming is Flow software. So for two reasons. So Flow is building the unified analytics framework. They'll be the fastest growing IIoT platform out there unless some other player emerges. Couple of reasons. Number one, Jeff Knepper is outstanding at marketing, relationships, putting the right people together. He's very, very gifted in that capacity. Graham, Lenny, and the rest of the development team at Flow, when you look at what they've decided they want to build using the unified analytic framework, which basically is going to plug into a UNS, and you'll have out-of-the-box analytics capabilities. When you couple that with Flow software, which is going to run inside of this framework, it's going to be incredibly powerful. I mean, incredibly powerful. I'll tell you this, though. The platform that wins is going to be the one that natural language processing knows the most about. So I'll leave with that piece there. If you're a company who's developing software and your documentation is behind a login or a paywall, so if you're and what that means is that natural language processors like ChatGPT, Google's Bard, et cetera, they can't train the model on that information, then it's going to be as if to the users of ChatGPT, including the developers, it's going to be as if that platform doesn't exist. They'll know it exists through marketing material, but it's not going to know how it exists technically. And you have to be developing your software now so that people can use ChatGPT and the like to develop with it. So inductive automation was very, very smart with that. All of their documentation's public. You don't have to log in to access the user manual. You don't have to log in to connect to, to hit the knowledge base. You have to log in for things like forums and that kind of thing. But inductive automation was very smart about their access to their data. And so right now, if you say you wanted to completely self-teach yourself on an IoT platform, inductive automation would be the best one, especially if you want to use ChatGPT to help you do it. All right, with that, I know it was long. Hopefully this was valuable. We'll probably publish this as a podcast as well, because I don't think there's any reason that you have to be seeing the screen or looking at me. Comment, like, subscribe, share the video with somebody who might benefit from it. Let us know down below if this long form response to just questions, this is just pure reading comments and me riffing, if this is valuable. If not, what would you rather see? Would you rather just see their traditional whiteboard video and we'll just handle the comments in the chat, or is it all right if we occasionally do this kind of thing? All right, with that, I will see you guys in the next one.